Preparing the collar is really easy. You got a nice long piece of material. This is 1.9 ounce PU coated ripstop. And all you need to do is you hem each side. So just do a small hem on this side as well as this side. You fold it in half and then you can base stitch along this entire length, and that just makes the hem one piece. When we go to install it around the top of the bag, these two sides will just overlap, and because those two ends are hemmed, there won't be any raw seam, and this will create a draw cord channel for you. Just do about a 1/2 inch hem. Don't make it too big. It's just to keep the raw edges. So we have small hems on both sides of the collar. Next thing to do is fold it in half long ways along the long axis. So we fold it in half along the long axis, and then I'm just going to run a basting stitch along this edge just to hold it as one piece. And this should be right sides out. The roll top collar and the cinch collar can use the same pattern piece. However, for the roll top collar, instead of hemming the two sides first, we're actually going to hem the entire top edge. Just do about a 1/2 inch to a 3/4 inch hem across the top. Whether you're doing a roll top collar or the cinch collar, you attach them the exact same way. So with the raw end on the cinch collar, the one that's been basted closed, or the raw edge of the roll top collar opposite your hem, you'll align that inside the bag along the top edge, and then you sew around the entire perimeter. For the cinch collar, you may want your free ends to be at the front because that's where your cord's going to come out. For the roll top, you can choose either the front or the back for your two ends of where you're going to do the vertical seam. On my bag, I'm going to be doing a cinch collar, so I'll get that in position and then I'm going to sew around the entire top perimeter of the bag. As I reach the point where I started, I like to open up the cinch collar so that the side that I started on can slip inside the rest of it, and then I sew over it. And that way, rather than just overlapping, they're kind of slid into each other, and it's just a nice finish. This seam between your collar and the bag is probably the most high traffic seam you're going to have, so I really do recommend binding it. I have a piece of grosgrain here that it's already a loop because I've done this seam binding once already, and I took it out just to get better video of it. I do this by hand. I fold the grosgrain in half, and then I run it along the sharp edge of a table just to put a nice crease on it. My grosgrain tape is 1 inch wide, so when it's folded in half, that gets you a 1/2 inch. My standard seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch. So no matter what, the seam binding is going to cover my construction seam. I don't want to eat into any of that standard seam allowance. I've set up my seam guide a little bit less than 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to sew this binding on. There we are, that's nice and bound. For the cinch top closure, I ran 3mm cord through the channel, and I'm using a Siberian cord lock. So this is the large style Siberian. I use this piece of webbing to hold it in place, and then I have a small piece of webbing as a pull handle. Another option for your closure is just a standard cord lock that has the little cutouts on the side that you can hold it in place. They're called toaster cord locks. The Siberians are nice because they're really easy to open and close one-handed. So that finishes off the cinch cord. If you did a roll top, once you've sewn it around the perimeter, you just have to close in the side, and then you can attach either hardware to the roll top, or you can use the webbing up the center with a opposite piece of webbing on the top to clip across the top of the bag. Then your closure system is completed. Let's move on to doing the lid. The design of the lid originally was terrible. So the one you're going to see me make, the construction method is almost identical, but I've made a lot of improvements in the pattern. But the zipper and the way you assemble it is identical. So I'll show you why this one looks bad. Here's our revised design. It's much sleeker, it's a little bit smaller, and it fits the overall look of the bag a lot better. I have my attachment point that goes to the center of the bag in the front with a little flap. Around the back, I have my 3 ladder locks that attach to the bag and a zipper underneath a weather flap. Here's prototype pack, and what you see here's lid top, and there's a zipper inserted into there. This is zipper flap, which covers it for weathering and also just for looks. And on the ends of each side of the zipper, there's a small piece of of fabric, which I call a zipper tab. What that allows is that you don't have to put the zipper teeth into your construction seam. So looking at the materials, I have my lid top, my zipper and the zipper pull, the 2 zipper tabs, and the zipper flap. I'm going to assemble my zipper by putting the pull onto it, adding my 2 tabs, adding the flap, and then cutting this panel and inserting the zipper along that cut line. The way I do these zipper tabs is pretty basic. I first lay the tab over the top of the zipper right sides together, and I just stitch across the zipper teeth itself and secure this tab in place. Then I'll fold it right sides out. I'll open it up right sides out, fold it in half, and then tuck the other side with a little fold down underneath where I just stitched and hide it. And then I'll stitch right along the edges of the zipper tape so that I have this tab with a long bit past the zipper teeth. With my lid top cut down the zipper cut line, I can set this piece aside. And I'm going to lay this right side out just so I can make sure I'm putting my zipper on the correct orientation. So when I'm sew this on, I want this zipper to go left to right. For your tabs, you just want to make sure that they're centered. Feel for the zipper teeth here and just center that on the panel. The tabs will come out to be about even on both sides. So I've stitched it on and I let my foot follow right along the side of the zipper. And the top of my zipper tape and the edge of the panel are even. I can now fold this down. And I'm going to run a top stitch right along the edge of that seam. For your top stitch, to get a professional look, make sure you lengthen out your stitch length, and you may want to increase your thread size. I ran out of bobbin thread. On my top stitch, that's always where you run out, is on your top stitch. So I got the top stitch in, you'd never even know that my bobbin ran out and I had to redo it. So I got my top half of the lid, the flap, my zipper underneath it, and my 2 tabs. So now we just need to put the bottom half on. Here's a neat little trick to see whether or not your panel is going to fit correctly. I grabbed my paper pattern piece for the top and I clipped my panel to that paper pattern piece. This is just a weight holding everything down. And if you look, when you roll this back, my zipper lands exactly on that line. The other thing you can do with the paper pattern piece when it clipped on like this is you can align the bottom half of this left and right so that these curves meet up with each other correctly. So here's another good time to use your paper pattern piece so that you can make sure that you end up with the correct length. All right, I'm lined up at the top of this panel. As I follow this down around, it's lined up on the other end. So this actually lined up perfectly. So now I'm just going to do a top stitch right along that edge again. Make sure you don't catch your flap. My zipper is inserted and the tabs are in place, pretty symmetric left to right. And the teeth are nowhere near my seam allowance, which will make doing the curves easier later. Now we're going to be attaching the side to the top. And it doesn't matter which side panel you use, they're symmetrical. Make sure they're right sides together. Have your side panel up. And you're going to curve the side panel to this seam. So I just hit the alignment mark on the top. My needle's down, and I'm going to lift it and just check to see if I'm even close to the alignment mark on the other side, and I am. So I'm doing pretty good on my seam allowance. I'm just going to keep going. And all I'm doing is I'm taking this side panel and I'm just forcing it into position as I go. So you'll see this side start to lift because I'm curving this panel around the side. The 2 sides are onto the lid. Those came out pretty well. Let's prepare the lid band, and this has the female side of the hardware for closure of the whole bag. I have a small piece of webbing in that side of the hardware, and I'm going to slide it between the 2 layers. And I'm going to leave myself enough webbing at the top so that I can make a securing tack once this is flipped right side out. I'm going to sew all the edges except for the long edge. We're not going to close this in. When you flip it right side out, you want this seam allowance so you can insert it into the lid. To join the whole lid together, we have the lid top with the sides attached, zippers in the back. I've pinned my band between the lid top and the lid bottom and at the front. So I've got the bottom pointing to the front and I have the top pointing to the front, and then my band is positioned to where the hardware is in the front. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew around the entire perimeter of this. Now that I've got the top and the liner attached and the band is on the inside, is we need to align the attachment points to the location that you put them on the back panel. One will be in the center, and then you just need to mark your sides so that you put the webbing in the right place, so that way your hardware will align to the webbing on the back panel. I have my little ladder locks and webbing. The ladder lock is inserted inside the bag. The webbing is hanging out. When you look inside the bag and you're looking at the liner panel, your hardware should be right side up. Now my hardware is fixed. I just need to do that 2 more times and the lid I can flip right side out.